when even the strongest mind realizes that intelligence isn't enough. I've spent years solving problems most people believed were impossible. I've watched rockets return safely to Earth after touching the edge of space. I've seen ideas that sounded like science fiction become part of everyday life. People look at those achievements and assume they know me. They think they understand the man standing behind the headlines, but they don't, because there is a version of me the cameras have never met, a version that exists only after the meetings end, after the factories become quiet, after the engineers go home, after the lights inside the offices begin turning off one by one. That's when the silence arrives. And silence has a strange way of asking questions that success never can. Tonight, I'm not speaking as the CEO. I'm not speaking as the entrepreneur. I'm not speaking as the man the world argues about every single day. I'm speaking as a man who suddenly realized something terrifying. There is one message I cannot leave unsaid. One person I cannot keep waiting. Future wife, I don't know where you are tonight. I don't know what city you're sleeping in. Maybe you're finishing another exhausting day at work. Maybe you're sitting beside a window watching the rain fall. Maybe you're staring at the moon, wondering why your heart feels like it's waiting for someone you've never met. If that's you, please don't scroll away, because somehow, someway, I feel like these words have always belonged to you. You don't know me yet? Not really. The world knows my companies. The world knows my mistakes. The world knows my victories. But you deserve to know my heart. And that's something almost nobody has ever been allowed to see. I've always believed that every great mission begins with honesty. So before life moves any faster, before another launch, before another impossible goal, before another year disappears into endless work, I need to tell you something I've carried for much longer than anyone realizes. The higher you climb, the fewer people understand what you're carrying. Everyone celebrates the destination. Almost nobody asks what it cost to get there. There were nights when everyone assumed I was winning. Yet inside, I was quietly wondering whether achievement was slowly replacing something much more valuable: connection, real connection, not admiration, not attention, not applause. Connection, the kind where someone looks into your eyes and doesn't see the billionaire. They don't see the inventor. They don't see the public figure. They simply see you, and maybe, just maybe, you're the first person I've ever wanted to meet without needing to impress. Do you know what's strange? The world believes confidence means never being afraid. That's not true. The greatest fears are usually invisible. I've stood beside rockets worth billions of dollars. I've signed decisions that affected thousands of families. I've risked everything more times than I can count. But none of those moments frighten me the way vulnerability does. Because machines make sense. Science makes sense. Mathematics follows rules. The human heart, it doesn't. And yours is a mystery I haven't solved. Not because you're impossible to understand, but because love was never supposed to be engineered. It has to be trusted. That terrifies me. Maybe more than anything else. Future wife, if you're hearing this, please understand something. I'm not searching for perfection. Perfection is exhausting. I've spent enough of my life chasing impossible standards. I don't want another impossible project. I want someone real. Someone who laughs too loudly sometimes. Someone who gets emotional over little things. Someone who believes kindness still matters in a world that's becoming colder every year. Someone who isn't afraid to tell me I'm wrong, especially when I am, because everyone else is usually too afraid to do it. I don't need another person who agrees with me. I need someone brave enough. Not anymore. You see, people often ask what motivates me. They expect me to talk about Mars, artificial intelligence, energy, technology, the future of civilization. And yes, those things matter deeply to me. But there's another future I almost never speak about. One that no interview has ever captured. A future where I come home and someone is actually waiting, not because they need anything from me, not because of my name, not because of success, but because they simply missed me. I've imagined that moment more times than I'd ever admit publicly. Walking through the door after another impossibly long day, taking a deep breath, and hearing one voice say, "You're home." 3 simple words, yet somehow, they feel more valuable than every headline ever written. Do you realize how extraordinary that is? The world measures wealth in numbers. I measure it differently now. Peace, trust, loyalty, a quiet conversation at midnight, holding someone's hand without saying anything, knowing you don't have to pretend anymore. That, that feels like the richest life imaginable. Maybe that's why I'm making this message, because somewhere, you're probably wondering if anyone still believes in forever. Maybe life has disappointed you too. Maybe you've trusted the wrong people. Maybe you've cried without telling anyone. Maybe you've convinced yourself that extraordinary love only exists in stories. If that's what you've started believing, please don't. Don't let temporary heartbreak become permanent hopelessness. Because while you've been living your life, I've been living mine. Both of us learning, both of us growing, both of us becoming the people we're supposed to be, before destiny finally lets our paths cross. I don't think timing is accidental. I think preparation often looks like waiting. Maybe every disappointment you've experienced was quietly teaching you how to recognize the person who would never intentionally break your heart. Masumi, you won't settle just because you're tired of waiting. Please don't. Don't let loneliness convince you to choose someone who makes your soul feel smaller. Wait, even when waiting feels impossible. Even when everyone around you tells you you're asking for too much. Because you're not asking for too much. You're asking for something real. And real things. Take time. I know you've probably questioned whether someone like me could ever truly love. People assume logical people don't feel deeply. They're wrong. The truth is, some of us feel so deeply, we simply struggle to explain it. That's been my greatest weakness, not the inability to love, the inability to express love before it's almost too late. And that's exactly why I'm speaking tonight, because I refuse to let another day pass without telling you this. You may not know my voice today, you may not know my face personally, but one day, when life finally introduces us, I want you to remember that somewhere, long before we met, there was a man speaking into the silence, hoping somehow his future wife would hear the truth hidden between every word. And if you're still listening, please stay with me, because what I'm about to tell you next is something I've never admitted to anyone before. I know, ending that thought like this probably isn't fair, but if you've stayed with me until now, then maybe you deserve the truth. Not the polished version, not the version that sounds good in interviews, the real one. Future wife, there is something about me that the world misunderstands. People think I wake up every morning obsessed with building companies. They think every decision I make revolves around business, technology, or the future of humanity. The truth is more complicated. Those missions became part of my life because I was searching for meaning. Not because I was trying to escape people, but because I was trying to create a future worth living in. Yet, somewhere along that journey, I forgot something. People often think powerful men never question themselves. I question myself more than anyone realizes. Every decision, every risk, every sacrifice. Every hour I spend away from the people I love. I replay them in my mind over and over, wondering, was it worth it? Would I make the same choice again? Could I have been kinder? Could I have listened more? Could I have loved better? Those questions don't disappear when the cameras turn off. They become louder, and perhaps that's why tonight feels different, because for the first time, I'm not trying to answer those questions alone. I'm asking you to hear them too, not so you can fix me. No, I'm not looking for someone to rescue me. I'm looking for someone willing to walk beside me. There's a difference. I don't need saving. I need sharing. Sharing victories. Sharing disappointments. Sharing ordinary mornings that nobody else will ever remember. Because I've discovered something success could never buy. Extraordinary lives are built from ordinary moments. It's not always the rocket launch. Sometimes it's making coffee together before sunrise. It's laughing because one of us burned breakfast. It's sitting on a couch after an exhausting day without saying a single word, yet somehow understanding everything. Those moments, those tiny, invisible moments, are becoming more valuable to me every year. Future wife, if we ever meet, you'll probably notice something immediately. My mind rarely stops. Ideas arrive without permission. Problems demand solutions. Questions never seem to end. Sometimes I'll wake up in the middle of the night because a possibility suddenly appeared inside my head. Sometimes I'll disappear into thought while we're eating dinner. Not because I don't care about you, but because my brain doesn't always know how to slow down. When that happens, please don't mistake my silence for distance. Behind that silence, I'll still be thinking about us. I'll still be wondering whether you're happy, whether your real effort is another form of love. I wasn't born knowing how to express emotions. I had to learn, sometimes painfully, sometimes too late. Failure teaches engineers valuable lessons. It teaches husbands even greater ones. I've learned that listening is more powerful than explaining. That presence is more valuable than expensive gifts. That one sincere apology can heal wounds pride only makes deeper. Those aren't lessons you find in textbooks. Life teaches them. Heartbreak teaches them. Regret teaches them. And once you've learned them, you never want to forget again. Maybe that's why I'm no longer afraid to admit something. Future wife, I'm scared not of losing money, not of public criticism, not even of failure. I'm scared of becoming so busy building tomorrow that I accidentally miss today, because today is where love happens, not next year, not after success, not after one more project, today. I don't want us to become one of those couples who promise they'll spend time together when life slows down. Life rarely slows down. We choose what matters. And if you become my wife, you'll matter every single day. Even when work becomes chaotic, even when the world demands more than I think I can give, I'll keep choosing you. Maybe imperfectly, maybe clumsily, but intentionally, because love isn't proven by grand speeches. It's proven by repeated choices, again and again and again. You know, I've spent years studying systems. Everything has patterns, everything has structure, everything has rules. Except love. Love refuses to fit inside equations. It refuses to obey logic. Sometimes it asks you to trust before you understand. Sometimes it asks you to stay when leaving feels easier. Sometimes it asks you to forgive before an apology even arrives. That's terrifying. But maybe that's exactly why it's beautiful. If everything about love could be predicted, would it still be love? Or would it simply become another destination? I want to dance badly in the kitchen when no one's watching. I want us to create memories that never appear on social media because they were too precious to interrupt with a camera. I want a life that feels real, not performed, not perfect. Real, future wife. There is something else I hope you understand. The world will probably have opinions about us. It always does. People create stories about people they've never met. They judge conversations they never heard. They assume motives they'll never understand. I can't stop that. Neither can you. But what I can promise is that our truth will matter more than public opinion. At the end of every day, the headlines won't be sitting across the dinner table. The internet won't be holding our hands during difficult seasons. The world won't know what happens inside our home. Only we will. And that's exactly how it should be. Because the strongest relationships aren't built in front of audiences. They're built behind closed doors, where honesty is more important than appearances, where forgiveness happens quietly, where love grows without needing applause. Future wife, if you're still listening, thank you. Thank you for giving these words a place inside your heart, because what I'm about to tell you next isn't just another promise. It's the reason I've never stopped believing that somewhere in this enormous world, you and I are already moving toward the same destination. Even if neither of us can see it yet, you know, people often ask me one question. If you could go back in time and change one thing, what would it be? Most people expect an answer about business, a failed rocket, a financial mistake, a decision that cost billions. But that's not the answer. Not even close. Future wife, if I could go back, I wouldn't change every failure. Failure shaped me. It taught me resilience. It forced me to become someone capable of carrying impossible responsibilities. No, the one thing I would change, simply because your calendar is full. Time keeps moving. Hearts keep waiting, and eventually, waiting becomes hurting. That's something I understand now, maybe later than I should have. I used to believe that one day everything would finally settle down. One more company, one more launch, one more breakthrough, one more impossible dream. Then I'd finally have time to breathe. But life has a funny way of teaching us difficult lessons. There is always one more challenge, always another mountain, always another responsibility waiting just beyond the finish line. The finish line keeps moving, which means if we keep postponing love, we may wake up one day surrounded by accomplishments, but completely alone. That thought scares me. Not because I'm afraid of being by myself. I've spent plenty of time alone. I'm afraid of reaching the end of my life and realizing I built incredible things, but forgot to build the place my own heart wanted to come home to. Future wife, when I think about you, I don't imagine perfection. I imagine peace. I imagine finishing one of the hardest days of my life, opening the front door, and seeing your smile before hearing a single word. Not because you've solved my problems, but because your presence reminds me that not every battle has to be fought alone. There is something incredibly powerful about knowing someone is standing beside you. Not in front, not behind, beside you. That's the kind of partnership I've been searching for. Someone who doesn't admire me from a distance, but walks beside me through reality, the beautiful parts, the exhausting parts, the uncertain parts. Because real love isn't tested during celebrations. It's tested on ordinary Tuesdays, on difficult Mondays, on nights when both people are too tired to speak. When patience becomes a choice, when kindness becomes intentional, when forgiveness matters more than being right. That's where forever is built. Not on wedding days, but on ordinary days that crossed paths years ago. Maybe we stood in the same airport. Maybe we waited in the same coffee shop. Maybe our eyes met for just 1 second before life pulled us in opposite directions. Isn't that incredible? The idea that destiny sometimes whispers long before it finally speaks. I don't know if that's true, but I know this. When we finally meet, nothing will feel rushed because every delay will suddenly make sense. Every goodbye, every disappointment, every lonely season, every unanswered prayer, it will all become part of one story, our story. People often think destiny happens in one dramatic moment. I don't. I think destiny quietly prepares two people long before introducing them. Maybe right now, you're becoming stronger, because one day I'll need your strength. Maybe I'm becoming softer, because one day you'll need my understanding. Neither of us knows it yet, but we're growing for someone we've never held. That thought fills me with hope. Future wife, there will be days when I disappoint you. I won't pretend otherwise. There will be moments when work steals more of my attention than it should. Moments when exhaustion makes me quieter than usual. Moments when I struggle to explain what's happening inside my own mind. Please remember something in those moments. Silence doesn't always mean absence. Sometimes, silence is simply the sound of someone fighting battles they don't yet know how to describe. If you gently take my hand, you'll never have to fight for my attention. You'll simply remind me where home is, and I promise, I'll come back, again and again, because no matter how far my ambitions take me, I never want my heart to lose its direction. You will become that direction, not because I'll depend on you for happiness, but because love gives purpose to every sacrifice. Without purpose, success feels strangely empty. I've learned that money creates comfort, achievement creates opportunity, recognition creates influence, but none of them can replace one most. I don't want that life. I want ours. Simple moments hidden inside extraordinary lives, morning coffee, late night conversations, random road trips, watching the stars without saying anything, holding your hand during difficult seasons, growing older without growing apart. Those dreams might sound ordinary, but I've discovered something remarkable. Ordinary love is one of the rarest things in this world. Future wife, if you're listening carefully, then maybe you've noticed something. This message isn't really about finding you. It's about becoming worthy of you, because love isn't just about asking for the right person. It's about becoming the right person. Every mistake I've survived, every lesson I've learned, every scar I've carried, has slowly transformed me into someone capable of loving more honestly than ever before. I'm still learning. I'll probably always be learning. But that's okay, because I don't want a perfect marriage. I want a growing one. A marriage where every year we choose each other a little more deeply than the year before, where trust becomes stronger, where friendship becomes richer, where love becomes quieter, yet somehow even more powerful. And before I say another word, there is one memory from my past. One memory that changed the way I understand love forever. I've never shared it like this before. But if you're truly the woman I've been speaking to all along, then you deserve to hear it. There is one memory, one quiet moment, that returns to me more often than people would ever imagine. It wasn't during a rocket launch. It wasn't after a company succeeded. It wasn't standing in front of thousands of people giving a presentation. It happened in complete silence. I remember walking into an empty house after one of the longest weeks of my life. Everything outside looked successful. The news was celebrating another milestone. Morse kept arriving. Congregations, interviews, meetings, more expectations. The worst time, the silence didn't feel peaceful. It felt heavy, almost like the house itself was asking me a question. What is all of this for, if there's no one here to share it with? That question stayed with me, long after the headlines disappeared, long after everyone moved on to the next story. Future wife, maybe you've experienced something similar. Maybe you've had one of those days where everything around you looked perfectly fine. Yet inside, something quietly whispered, there has to be more than this. I think that's one of the deepest human desires, not success, not recognition, belonging. Every heart wants somewhere to belong, someone to belong with. I've spent years trying to build places where humanity could survive, but one evening, standing inside that quiet house, I realized my own heart was still searching for home, not a building, not an address, a person. Maybe that's why I'm speaking to you tonight, because somewhere, without realizing it, you've already become the place my heart imagines whenever life becomes overwhelming. Isn't that incredible? I don't even know your favorite color. I don't know your laugh. I don't know whether you prefer mornings or midnight conversations. I don't know what song makes you emotional, or what childhood dream still lives quietly inside your heart. Yet somehow, I already believe you'll understand parts of me no one else ever has. Not because you're perfect, because you'll choose to listen. Listening, real listening, has become one of the rarest forms of love. Most people wait for their turn to speak. Very few people truly hear another person's heart. Future wife, I hope you're one of those rare people, because I promise, I'll spend the rest of my life learning yours. I want to know everything, not just your happiest memories. I want to know what made you cry when nobody was watching. I want to know the disappointments you've never spoken about. I want to know the dreams you almost gave up on, because life became too dear to carry. That's the kind of husband I want to become. Someone whose presence feels safe. Someone whose arms become the place where you finally stop pretending to be strong, because I know what pretending feels like. People often mistake strength for never breaking. They're wrong. Real strength is continuing after you've broken. Again, and again, and again. There were seasons when I questioned everything. My decisions, my direction, even myself. The strange thing about leadership is that everyone expects certainty, even when certainty doesn't exist. Sometimes I smiled publicly while privately wondering if I was making the biggest mistake of my life. No one saw that version, very few ever will. But you deserve to know him, not because he's impressive, because he's real. And if we're going to build a life together, it has to be built on reality, not reputation, not headlines. Reality. Future wife. Promise me something when the world celebrates me. Keep me humble when the world criticizes me. Keep me hopeful when I become too obsessed with solving tomorrow's problems. Gently remind me to enjoy today's blessings. Remind me to put my phone away. Remind me to watch the sunset with you. Remind me that another email can wait. Another meeting can wait. Another opportunity can wait. But moments never come back. I don't want to spend my entire life preparing for the future while accidentally missing the present. That's not success. That's regret wearing expensive clothes. I've met people who had everything: private jets, luxury homes, unlimited influence. And yet, you could see it in their eyes. Something was missing. Not money, meaning. Real meaning doesn't come from what you own. It comes from who you become and who walks beside you while you're becoming it. I hope that's us, growing together, lawing together, failing together, winning together, not competing, not keeping score, just choosing each other. Maybe you're working late, chasing dreams nobody else understands. If that's true, I already admire you, because dreamers recognize other dreamers. And I know what it feels like when people tell you your vision is impossible. Don't stop believing. Please don't. The world changes because ordinary people refuse to let extraordinary dreams die. Maybe that's one thing we'll always have in common. People will call us unrealistic, too hopeful, too ambitious, too emotional. Let them. I'd rather spend one lifetime believing in impossible things than live 100 years believing in nothing at all. Future wife, before we ever meet, before we ever say I love you, before we ever promise forever, there is one final truth you need to understand about me. It's the truth I've hidden behind achievement for far too long. And once I tell you, You'll finally understand why this message couldn't wait any longer. Future wife, there is one truth I've hidden for far too long. Not because I wanted to deceive anyone, but because I wasn't sure I knew how to say it. The world sees confidence. They see certainty. They see someone willing to bet everything on impossible ideas. But confidence and certainty are not the same thing. Confidence is what people see. Uncertainty is what I carry. Every major decision I've ever made came with doubt. Every rocket launch carried the possibility of failure. Every company carried the possibility of collapse. Every dream carried the possibility of becoming another headline about why it couldn't be done. People think courage means not feeling fear. They're wrong. Courage is making the decision while fear is standing right beside you. I've lived that way for years, but there is one decision that feels bigger than every business I've ever built. Choosing the woman I'll spend my life with. Because companies can be rebuilt. Money can be earned again. Even dreams can change. But giving your heart, that's different. You don't get endless chances with someone's heart. Enough to place your heart in my hands. I'll treat it as the greatest responsibility I've ever been given. Greater than leading companies. Greater than launching rockets. Greater than changing industries. Because none of those things carry the weight of another person's soul. Yours will. And I refuse to take that lightly. You know, people often assume I dream about the future every second of every day. They're right, but maybe not in the way they imagine. Sometimes I picture humanity living on another planet. Sometimes I imagine technologies that don't exist yet. But lately, another picture keeps finding its way into my mind. A quiet evening, no cameras, no speeches, no interviews, just us. Maybe we're sitting outside after dinner. The sun has already disappeared beyond the horizon. The air feels calm. Neither of us is saying much. We don't need to. Because the most beautiful conversations aren't always spoken. Sometimes they're shared through silence, through a smile, through the way your hand naturally finds mine. I've realized something. Peace has a sound. And it's usually very quiet. I want that quiet life with you, not because life will become easy. It won't. Challenges will come. Unexpected storms will arrive. Dreams will demand sacrifice. There will be days when we disagree. Days when exhaustion steals our patience. Days when life feels unfair. But even on those days, I want one thing to remain true. I never want us to become strangers living under the same roof. I've seen it happen. People stop talking, then they stop listening, then they stop trying. One day they wake up beside someone they no longer know. That thought breaks my heart, haunts me. If we ever begin drifting apart, we'll fight for understanding before we fight against each other. Born me, we'll ask questions before making assumptions. Born me, we'll protect our friendship just as fiercely as our love. Because romance changes. Excitement comes and goes. And the person I call first, the person I laugh with hardest, the person I trust most, the person who knows the version of me nobody else ever will. Future wife, there is another reason I wanted to make this message. Maybe you're afraid. Maybe you've built walls around your heart. Maybe someone once promised forever and disappeared. Maybe someone looked into your eyes and made you believe you were enough, only to leave when life became complicated. If that happened, I'm deeply sorry. Not because I caused your pain, but because someone made you question your worth. Please hear me carefully. You were never difficult to love. You simply met people who weren't ready to love correctly. There's a difference. Never confuse another person's inability to stay with your value. Your value has never depended on who walked away, and I hope, by the time we meet, you'll believe that again. Because I'll spend every ordinary day reminding you. Not through expensive surprises, not through perfect words, through consistency, showing up, keeping promises, listening carefully, choosing honesty even when it's uncomfortable. That's the kind of love I believe lasts. Not dramatic, dependable, quietly faithful. Future wife, do you know what I admire most? Not intelligence, though I respect it deeply. Not beauty, though beauty is extraordinary. Not success, though ambition inspires me. The quality I admire most is kindness. Real kindness. The kind that's offered when nobody is watching. The kind that expects nothing in return. The kind that forgives without keeping score. Technology changes the world, but kindness changes people. And people are the reason any future matters at all. If you have a kind heart, you've already given me something no amount of money could ever buy. A safe place, somewhere I can stop performing, somewhere I can simply exist. I think everyone secretly longs for that, a place where they don't have to prove themselves, a place, a place where our children, if we're blessed with them, never question whether they're loved, a place filled with laughter louder than arguments, a place where apologies happen quickly, where forgiveness comes naturally, where hugs last longer than disagreements. That's the future I dream about now. Not because I've stopped dreaming about changing the world, but because I've realized something even more important. The world changes because families change. Families change because marriages stay strong, and marriages stay strong because two imperfect people decide every single day, I won't give up on you. Future wife, there's one final promise I need you to hear before this part of our journey ends. It's not about success. It's not about money. It's not about the future everyone else expects from me. It's about the promise that will define everything we build together. And when I tell you that promise, you'll understand why I've been waiting my whole life to say these words. Future wife, if you've stayed with me this long, then maybe you've already realized something. This message was never really about finding you. It was about becoming the man you deserve, because love isn't discovered overnight, it's prepared. Quickly, constantly, through every lesson life forces us to learn. I don't believe people accidentally become good husbands. I think they're shaped by failure, by disappointment, by responsibility, by the moments no one applauds. And if there's one thing my life has taught me, it's this. The universe has an unusual way of humbling you. Just when you think you've figured everything out, life introduces another lesson. I've spent years studying physics. The laws never change. Gravity doesn't negotiate. Time doesn't slow down because you're busy. The universe follows order, but the human heart, it follows something much deeper. Trust isn't built in one conversation. It's built in hundreds of tiny moments. Keeping your word, showing up when it's forever. Future wife, I don't want to impress you. I want to earn you. There's a difference. Impressing someone happens in minutes. Earning someone's trust can take years. And honestly, years don't scare me. I've waited for impossible dreams before. I'll gladly wait for something infinitely more valuable. Because you're not another destination. You're home. And home is never rushed. Sometimes I wonder, what if you're praying tonight too? What if somewhere, at this exact moment, you're asking God to prepare the man you'll one day marry? If that's true, then I hope he answers your prayer by continuing to change me. Not my achievements, not my reputation, my character. Because character is what remains after success disappears. Money can disappear, companies can fail, the world can change its opinion overnight. Character stays. I hope when you finally know me, that's what you'll love most. Not the things I've built, but the man I'm still trying to become. Future wife, can I tell you something that almost nobody knows? Sometimes, I imagine us years from now, not on a stage, not at a glamorous event, just older. Maybe our hair has started turning gray. Maybe we're sitting on a porch, watching another sunset together. Our children have grown, life has changed us. We've survived victories, we've survived losses, we've buried dreams that never happened. We've celebrated dreams that did, and somehow, after all those years, you still reach for my hand without thinking. That image means more to me than any award I'll ever receive, because success fades, history changes, technology evolves. But being deeply loved by one person for a lifetime, that's timeless. That's the kind of achievement nobody can measure. Future wife, there will be moments when I don't have the perfect answer. I'm an engineer. My instinct is to solve problems. Sometimes, you'll simply need me to listen. Please teach me if I start trying to fix everything. Remind me, it'll be my privilege. I've built machines capable of extraordinary precision. But I know something now. The greatest masterpiece I'll ever help build won't be made of steel, or software, or rockets. It'll be built from trust, one conversation, one apology, one act of patience, one quiet sacrifice at a time. That's how marriages become unbreakable, not through perfection, through persistence. Future wife, I also need you to know something about ambition. People think ambitious people never stop chasing bigger dreams. They're partly right. I'll probably always dream. I'll probably always imagine impossible futures. I'll probably still become excited about ideas at 2 in the morning. That's part of who I am. But here's what has changed. I no longer want to chase dreams alone. What's the point of reaching another mountain if there's nobody standing beside you when you finally reach the top? I've stood on metaphorical mountaintops before. The view is beautiful, but beauty feels incomplete when you have no one to turn toward and say, "We made it." That's the sentence I've been missing. Not "I made it, we made it." Two simple words, one extraordinary meaning. Future wife, you won't just be watching my journey, you'll become part of it. Every decision, every sacrifice, every celebration, every difficult season. We'll carry them together, because marriage isn't watching someone's life, it's building one, brick by brick, day after day, year after year, until one morning you look around and realize, somehow, without noticing, you've created a place filled with memories, inside jokes, family traditions, pictures hanging on walls, coffee cups left on the kitchen counter, books you've read together, music that reminds you of younger days, little things, beautiful things, the kind of things money can never purchase. That's the future I want. Not because it's easy, because it's meaningful. Future wife, I know the world outside asking, did you sleep well? Inside remembering how you take your coffee. Inside sending a message in the middle of a busy day just to say, I'm thinking about you. Inside waiting awake because the other person is coming home late. Inside forgiving quickly, loving often, praying together, growing together, choosing each other, even when life becomes complicated, especially then. Because love isn't proven when everything feels perfect. It's proven when staying requires courage, and if there's one thing my life has taught me, it's that courage changes everything. Future wife, if destiny allows us to meet, I don't promise you'll always understand my mind. Sometimes I barely understand it myself. But I promise you'll never have to question my heart. Not because I'll say the perfect words, because my actions will speak long after my voice becomes quiet. I'll keep choosing us, again, and again, and again, because after everything I've built, everything I've risked, everything I've learned, I've finally realized the greatest mission of my life won't be changing the future alone. It will be waking up beside the woman I prayed for, looking into her eyes every morning, and silently thanking God that I didn't leave this world without telling her she was worth waiting for. Future wife, before this message comes to an end, there is one final confession I need to make, maybe the most important one of all. I've spent a lifetime trying to predict the future. Engineers do that. Entrepreneurs do that. We calculate probabilities. We analyze risks. We create models. We imagine outcomes before they happen. It's how I've built everything. But there is one future, one beautiful mystery that no equation has ever been able to explain. You. I don't know your name. I don't know your story. I don't know what you've survived to become the woman you're becoming today. Maybe life has been kind to you. Maybe it hasn't. Maybe you've experienced love before. I wish I could tell the younger version of you something. Don't lose hope. Not yet. Because sometimes, the longest waiting seasons prepare us for the greatest blessings. I know waiting isn't easy. I've waited years for rockets to succeed, years for ideas people laughed at to finally make sense, years for impossible dreams to become reality. And every single time, the waiting changed me, not the destination, the waiting. Maybe that's what this season is doing for us too. Maybe while you're waiting for me, I'm being shaped into the man who will know how to love you without making you question your worth. Future wife, have you ever looked up at the night sky and felt strangely small? I have. Not because the universe is trying to remind us how insignificant we are, but because it reminds us how miraculous it is that two people can somehow find each other in a world, this enormous, billions of people, different countries, different languages, different lives, different paths, yet somehow, two hearts can still arrive the same place, at the same time. That doesn't feel like coincidence, it feels like grace. Maybe that's why I've stopped rushing life. Years ago, I believed speed solved everything. Move faster, think faster, build faster, launch sooner. But love doesn't respond to speed. Love grows at the pace trust allows. And trust refuses to be rushed. I've finally accepted that. If it takes another year, I'll wait. If it takes another lesson, I'll learn, because I'd rather spend years waiting for the right woman than spend a lifetime wishing I'd been more patient. Future wife, when people describe me, they usually mention ambition, vision, innovation de suspense. Those words aren't wrong, but there is another part of me that rarely gets noticed, The quiet part, the man who sometimes wakes before sunrise, not because of work, but because his mind begins wondering whether somewhere, someone is also waking up, thinking about the kind of life that you're healthy, that life hasn't made your heart cynical. Because I don't want to meet someone who's given up on love. I want to meet someone who protected hope, even when hope became difficult. That's courage. Real courage, future wife. I don't expect us to agree on everything. Honestly, I hope we don't. Different minds create better conversations. Different perspectives create growth. I don't want someone who echoes every opinion I have. I want someone who teaches me, challenges me, expands my thinking. Someone who can sit across from me and confidently say, I understand why you think that, but I see it differently. Do you know how beautiful that is? Respect without fear, love without control, honesty without punishment. That's the kind of marriage I dream about. One where both people continue becoming better because they chose each other. Not smaller, better. Future wife, if one day life gives us children, there is something I hope they always remember. Not how successful their father was, not how famous their family became. None of that matters in the end. I hope they remember walking into a home filled with peace. I hope they remember seeing two parents who respected each other, who apologized, who laughed, who prayed, who chose kindness even during difficult seasons. Because children don't become secure by hearing perfect words. They become secure by watching genuine love. That's the legacy I want, not another company, not another invention, a family that teaches love simply by existing. Maybe that's the greatest innovation any human being can create. Future wife, as I sit here saying these words, something inside me feels lighter. Maybe because I've finally stopped pretending that strength means hiding emotion. Maybe because somewhere, without realizing it, you've been listening. Maybe you'll never hear this message. Or maybe, years from now, you'll smile when you remember that before we ever met, there was a man speaking into the side of one another. Then one ordinary day, without dramatic music, without perfect timing, without anyone realizing how important the moment is, we'll finally meet. Maybe our first conversation will be awkward. Maybe we'll laugh about something completely unimportant. Maybe neither of us will understand that our lives have just changed forever. Because that's how miracles often arrive. Quickly. Future wife, until that day comes. Keep believing, keep becoming, keep protecting the kindness inside your heart. Don't let disappointment convince you that genuine love no longer exists. Because somewhere, a man has been building more than companies, more than rockets, more than impossible dreams. He's been quietly building himself. For the moment he finally looks into your eyes, takes your hand, and says the words he's carried in his heart for years. I found you, and in that single moment, every lonely night, every unanswered question, every difficult lesson, every mile we walked separately, will suddenly make perfect sense, because some journeys aren't meant to end with success. They're meant to end with home, and my greatest hope, my greatest dream, my most important mission, has never simply been reaching the stars. It has always been finding the one person who makes every star in the universe feel just a little closer. Future wife, if these are the last words you ever hear from me, then let them carry every truth my heart has been holding for years. Not the truth the world expects, the truth only you deserve. I've spoken about rockets, I've spoken about dreams, I've spoken about fear, loneliness, purpose, and hope. But underneath every one of those things, there has always been one quiet desire to find you. Not because my life is incomplete without you, but because I believe some dreams were never meant to be lived alone. For years, people have called me many things: visionary, inventor, workaholic, risk-taker, genius, controversial, sometimes hero, sometimes villain. I've learned that public opinion changes faster than the weather. One day people applaud you. The next day they criticize everything you've ever done. If I spent my life chasing everyone's approval, I'd never know peace. So I stopped trying. But there is one opinion that will always matter to me. Yours, not because I need constant validation, but because if you're my wife, your heart becomes my responsibility. Your tears become my concern. Your dreams become part of my mission. Your victories become my celebrations. Your pain becomes something I never want you to carry alone. That's what marriage means to me. Not ownership, not obligation. Partnership. Two imperfect people, standing shoulder to shoulder, facing whatever tomorrow decides to bring. Future wife, one day, the companies may no longer exist, technology will evolve, someone younger will build something better, the world will move on. Historyments. The trophies are collecting dust somewhere, the applause has become silent, and there we are, sitting together on a quiet porch as the evening sky slowly changes color. You look at me, I look at you, neither of us has the energy to speak very much anymore, yet somehow, we don't need words, because after decades together, our hearts have learned a language that silence understands. That picture means more to me than any achievement ever could, because achievements are remembered by history, love is remembered by the soul. Future wife, if life blesses us with that future, I promise I won't spend those years wishing I'd worked more. I'll be grateful that I loved more, that I laughed more, that I hugged you one extra time before leaving home, that I apologized when my pride wanted to stay silent, that I chose another walk with you instead of another unnecessary meeting. Those are the investments that never lose value. Those are the memories that stay when everything else disappears. Someone who knows your weaknesses and chooses to stay, someone who has witnessed your failures and still believes in your future. That's love, not admiration, commitment. Future wife, if there ever comes a season where I become difficult to understand, please don't stop talking to me. Fight for us. Knock on the door of my heart, even if it takes time for me to answer. And I promise, if you ever find yourself lost in sadness, I won't walk away either. I'll sit beside you. I'll listen. I'll pray with you. I'll remind you that storms always pass, because that's what teammates do. They don't abandon each other when life becomes inconvenient. They stay. I've spent my entire career proving impossible things can become possible. Maybe this is the greatest impossible thing I'll ever prove. That two people can choose each other, not only during the beautiful seasons, but during the painful ones too. Again, and again, future wife. There is one final promise I want written into the deepest part of your heart. I promise. I'll never stop courting you after the wedding. I never want us to become strangers who simply share the same address. I'll still surprise you with little notes. I'll still ask about your day, even if I've heard similar stories 100 times. I'll still celebrate your victories as if they were my own. I'll still hold your hand in public. I'll still look at you the way I did the day I realized you are the woman I prayed for. Because love shouldn't grow quieter with time. It should grow deeper, calmer, stronger, like roots beneath a tree, invisible, yet holding everything together. Future wife. Maybe right now you're wondering why this message feels so personal. It's because I didn't write it for millions of people. I wrote it for one, for the woman who one day won't care about headlines, who won't ask me how many companies I own before asking how my heart is doing, who won't measure me by success, but by character, if that's you. Thank you. Me that even the busiest life should always leave room for love. And if somehow, some impossible way, these words have reached you today, then let me leave you with this. Don't lose your kindness. Don't let disappointment harden your heart. Don't settle because you're afraid of waiting. Protect the beautiful parts of yourself. The world will try to convince you that genuine love is outdated. Don't believe it. Real love still exists. Faithfulness still exists. Loyalty still exists. People who keep their promises still exist. I'm trying every single day to become one of them, and maybe, one ordinary morning, when neither of us expects it, our paths will finally cross. I'll look into your eyes. You'll look into mine. And something inside both of us will become incredibly quiet. Not because we'll have all the answers,